So it was about a year ago when I entered the Natural History Museum in Stockholm, and I was looking for a book because my son, he asked me, "Mom, can you tell me what you're working with?" And I said, "Of course, my son, I will go and find you the best book available about geothermal." So I went into one bookstore, the second and the third, and I was thinking, okay, they don't have it in the usual bookstores. They must have it at the Natural History Museum. Yeah? I wandered around and I was looking in the books, and there was nothing about geothermal. So I started asking myself, if I'm working with this amazing product, if I'm working with these amazing people, how come no one else know what I do? How come my son cannot easily say, "My mom is working within geothermal," and everybody else will say, "Aha, okay, I know that." This started a quest of getting to know, if we are this amazing, why aren't we more known than we are? How come is it so that we might be the best kept secret in the world? No, we cannot have it like that. And I started wandering around and seeing if we have some colleagues, and I noticed that there were many thinking and feeling the same way. The first one I contacted was Marit Brommer and Alexander Richter, and we united in the question that there is something more to be done. We want to show the world what we are so proud with. So about 6 months ago, we had the first roundtable. And we had a great outcome with about 70 people attending on a virtual roundtable. And from that, we got a really good white paper that was written. And we said, we will be back. We are back. Welcome, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome to the Industry Roundtable. Please let me please let me present my co-host of today, Alexander Richter and Marit Brommer. Please join me up on stage. And I think they need a, yeah. I would like to start by saying thank you for the honor of hosting this event. I think we all unite in the quest that it is an important question to talk about. How do you feel about this, Marit?
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I think this is what we need to do.
Why?
Why? We're not on track, according to the IEA. We're not on track when it comes down to reaching Sustainable Development Goal number 7. That's the reason why we're here. We want to achieve that.
Yeah, good reason. Alex, why are you here?
The untapped potential we need to tap, clearly.
Good. So a lot of people actually joined us in this quest, and after the first roundtable, we went out and showed the world what we got. And we got a lot of attention. Amazing how many people through different varieties of channels actually came back to us and asked. And the biggest topic that we had to handle was like, why was I not a part of this roundtable? I have an opinion here. So we decided that that's true. There are a lot of people out there with great expertise, and we wanted to make sure to invite them. So what we did is that we used the opportunity to get in a great diversity into the quest today. You're going to be watching a panel debate where we're going to discuss the industry and the different things we need to do to unite it, our industry, to make sure that we are on everybody's lips. With us here today, we have 58 names that the industry, all of the people around, nominated as geothermal experts. They are either on the screen over there, on the virtual, all over from the world, or some of them are even there. If you are one of the geothermal experts, can you please stand up? There we have some of them. Give them an applaud, and also the ones we have on virtual legs. They have been asked a number of questions that this panel will debate. So I know that we have a really good panel. We have really good panelists with us today. I know that some of them are already know, but let's go through a little bit about who are here. If you please just stand up when I call your name. We start with Mr. Will Petit. Please stand up and take your applause. From Geothermal Rising, a non-professional trade organization established in the US. We have here with us today Andy Sabin. Please stand up. Working as a geothermal program officer in the military. We have Mr. Magnus Brandberg here. Founding partner and investment professional in a family-owned business and partly owning Baseload and also Oatly and other companies. We have Mrs. Andrea Blair, President of International Geothermal Association. And last but not least, Miss Ann Roberts, Mrs. Yeah. Okay, Mrs. Okay. Ann Robertson Tate, our wing lady president of Geothermics. I'm very happy to have you on stage. Are you guys stoked?
Oh,
We have different things we will do. I will moderate the debate. What will you do?
I will be on the computer and watching the virtual group participating with questions, so try to take this together.
Yeah, and Marit, what will you do?
I will sit back and listen.
Yeah, and ask the questions when they're out in the audience.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. But I think it's also needed to have some kind of inspiration. So we don't want to be here preaching to the choir. We want to have inspiration from outside. And when we were discussing where to get this inspiration, we came to think about for the embassies of the world, who are better in coordinating, cooperating, and making sure that we have good places where we can find good situation for discussion. We are very happy to have Mr. Ambassador Per Ahlberger with us here today.
Hi there.
And we're also going to have with us here today a joker in the game who will challenge us all, Mr. Pete Tate. As I said, if there is any organization that knows about cooperation, it's the embassies all over the world. They're built and structured to focus on making bonds between countries. And I think that we can be seen as individuals or countries or even continents sitting in this room. So I think that there's a lot of inspiration to be taken. And I'm very happy to have Per Ahlberg here, who has been an ambassador for Sweden for 20 plus years. And you've been traveling, let me just, I actually need to read this. You have been in Copenhagen, Beijing, Singapore, Canberra, New Zealand, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Kiribati, Samoa, Solomon Island, Tonga, Nauru, Tuvalu, and additionally, you have been the ambassador for international sustainable business at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Sweden. So I'm very happy and honored to welcome you, Mr. Ambassador, to the floor.
Tack Kristina. You can hear me? Yeah? Yeah, how to start looking at all these experts on geothermal sector. This is my first time I meet with the sector. My God, what can I add to what all your knowledge and your experience? So when Kristina contacted me, of course, I was very honored and humbled. What I could possibly do is to add the perspective from an outsider. And if you don't mind, I will do a bit of benchmarking on what we have done, Team Sweden, let's call it that, on one particular sector, and that's mining. We could also do other sectors like life science and so forth. Defense, I was the ambassador coordinating Swedish defense exports like the JAS Gripen fighters and such. And they will really come together in these mega projects. But this time, I've got 5 minutes or so, 4 to 5 minutes, I decided to do mining. I feel that should be, I guess, some lessons to learn here, some overlaps. So ecosystems or clusters or whatever you call it. I think we have, if I may say so, Sweden we have created an ecosystem, a successful one, on mining. Obviously, it's an old sector. Can you imagine the Falu copper mine was opened in the year 1000. It closed down in 98, I think it was 1998, and it had been open for 1,000 years. It's impressive. To me, based on my experiences from doing defense exports, international sustainable business, we have a coordinating ambassador for CSR, let's call it that, since 2002. And I held that position before taking on this present position of mine. And I was an ambassador to Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, and I've been posted to China as the deputy head of mission. In most of these places, I've been collaborating closely with the mining sector. And if I would use my 3 minutes or whatever is left of my time, then I would say that there are 3 basic reasons why I would say that we have been able to create an ecosystem on mining. The first one, in no particular order really, is the absolute need to have to collaborate within the framework of Triple Helix. Triple Helix was launched as a concept by, I think, the 2 Dutch researchers in the mid-90s, and it was implemented in Sweden some 20 years ago. Triple Helix is simply the obvious fact that we need to collaborate closely between government, academia, and business. Triple Helix. I've come to realize that it has become more of a Swedish concept rather than an international one, but it was launched by the Dutch. You know how it is, or at least my experience is that as an ambassador or representing Sweden, sometimes you do promote all the time, but the end result is not always clear to you. It could be an investment, it could be trade in both directions, or it could be R&D collaboration. But it's a must, it's a necessity to have them all on board. A true strength, I would say. So Triple Helix. Number 2, to be able to gather around one project, one platform. And what we did, or the industry did together with academia on mining, is that I think it was, could it have been 5-6 years ago, the Swedish mining industry, together with a few universities, created what they call the Sustainable Underground Mining Alliance. They were using one of the mines, the LKAB mine up in Swedish Arctic, as a test mine for new technologies. And they added to this test mine, they added a virtual mine that created a fantastic synergy by all involved partners in the Triple Helix, government, academia, and business alike. Which will then, and that takes me to the next point and final point. So having this, common joint platform was a fantastic asset when we started to reach out for international partners and on the world market. So what we did, and that all of this is obvious to you, but again, I'm sharing my experiences, is that based with that platform, this alliance that was created, we reached out to obvious international partners. And they would have been, again, in no particular order, although Australia is close to my heart, Australia, Canada, and Chile. Those 3 countries, which we targeted them to collaborate. And what was interesting, and an eye-opener to me in terms of new partners, was that, to me, born in 1962, when you talk mining, it's Epiroc, it's Atlas Copco, LKAB, Sandvik, and those, traditional mining companies. But here, all of a sudden, I was collaborating, you hear me? I was collaborating with a company like Ericsson. Obviously, 5G is a necessity if you want to have conduct sustainable mining. And another company that came up was Saab. Saab being considered, not the cars now, they're gone, unfortunately, but Saab Defense, Saab Combitech. So all of a sudden, you had, as a partner in this mining cluster, Ericsson. They made fantastic presentations on sustainable mining. So that I thought about it yesterday when we had the presentation by Tencent, was it? Talking about the new technologies, and that is something to look at mining as a benchmark. So those 3 points, those would be the reasons why I would say that we have a successful cluster. So number 1, triple helix with this definition that I mentioned. Number 2, one joint project of some sort. And number 3, new partners like it could be Ericsson and others. And by the way, sorry, I forgot one thing. In the presentation yesterday by this managing director from Kenya, that was the only time yesterday when the SDGs were really specifically mentioned and related to the SDG Global Compact. Global Compact, as we all know, launched by Kofi Annan, was it 2001, I believe. And something I always encourage, and which we do within the mining sector, is always collaborate and reach out to Global Compact national chapters. They are often neglected. I would think that in most of the countries where you and your companies are involved, there would be a local Global Compact chapter. Work with them. It's fantastic. So it's not only a matter for the head office to sign up to Global Compact and do the reporting. They are fantastic, also in China. So those would be my comments, and time has been running out, and I promised to leave some time for you to raise a few questions.
To ask some questions.
Yeah.
Additionally, I'm very curious. This
Yeah.
What happens if one of the points is missing? Let's say that we have really good collaboration between academia and business, but the last one is missing. What happens?
Then you have no cluster. I mean, it's fundamental. You need everyone on board. And you know how it is. I'm sure it's the same in your sector, that it all boils down to personalities. And I've come to that age, so you fairly soon see if someone has got it or not. So it's a very simple answer to that question, and then you won't have a cluster. It's not possible to achieve it.
In that case, what do you recommend people to do in order to, because sometimes it's a slow start, you have an idea. How do you come about to take that contact?
This might not sound terribly, how should I say, serious. But my experience is that you can't simply consider it for too long and too much on which particular project you gather around. If it's good enough, just go ahead with that one. That's my experience. I mean, you can consider and you can have discussions for ages on which particular project you should start with. If it's good enough and if there is an initial interest from all these triple helix partners, go for it, and then it will develop from there.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I think that was an excellent conclusion of your very interesting and inspiring speech.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Tack.
The next speaker that I want to put on stage is someone that I got to know through a different collaboration. So we're cooperating at Baseload Capital with Energy Disruptors, and we were discussing how to move forward again with industry. And Graham Edge, the founder of that, was telling me about this really good paper that he had read, and you should really read it. And someone sends you an email and you have that report, and it's there. You know that you should read it. And then it comes up again from another point of view. It's like, there's this really good paper, you should really read it. And I was like, okay, then I'll sit down and read it. And oh my God, I read it and I was amazed. The next speaker is going to throttle you, is going to amaze you, and is going to challenge you, correct? Peter Tate, please join me up on stage.
Wow. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. Okay. All right. So how do we run?
So listen. Who's this guy? Who are you?
So this is my first, I think, Anne could probably correct me if I'm wrong. I think my first actual geothermal conference I've ever been to. But I've been married to geothermal since 1985. So, and in fact, it goes back even further than that I helped Anne with her field measurements at Wairaki when she was doing her
Anne
master's
being Anne
thesis.
Robertson Tate,
Anne Robertson Tate.
sitting here, yeah.
Doing her master's thesis at Wairaki in '84. So I've been standing next to geothermal for all this time, and I've had
While working with everything else.
a long career in tech marketing, working in mostly the software business in Silicon Valley. And I finally got sick of watching geothermal not be visible and not be able to market itself, so I decided I'm going to fix this. So after 35 years, or 36 years, I finally decided I'm going to contribute something back to this community. So here I am.
Okay, so that's interesting, but can you tell me something about being married to someone in 37 years?
Well, so given that my wife is sitting right in front of me here, I think I'll keep this, and we're pressed for time, I'll keep it short in that I'll say I married my best friend.
There you go. Okay, so now you know. Listen, while you have been, because you have really been married to geothermal in that sense, and you've seen the ups and downs and everything,
Yep.
so what would you say are the ingredients, the ingredient branding, and why do you think is relevant to
Well, in the paper, and it's pretty tricky to distill 40 pages down to a couple of minutes here, but I propose an ingredient branding way of thinking about the geothermal problem. I said geothermal is like spandex, and but I think the example that works better perhaps is Gore-Tex, because I was talking to Christina about what's an example that works in Europe. And Gore-Tex is just a waterproof fabric. It's nothing particular, it's expanded polytetrafluoroethylene. It's nothing particularly fabulous. But the Gore-Tex people built a successful brand, so when you go buy a raincoat, you go buy hiking boots, you will pay extra. You don't look at it purely on price. You will pay extra and you will go looking for this ingredient. And I would like to have geothermal become like Gore-Tex in the sense that I want end consumers to be saying to their power companies, where's my geothermal? Because individual consumers are now right in the middle of the energy conversation. It isn't just electricity comes out of the wall and I don't care where it came from and I don't know anything about it. The public is now right in the middle of this discussion. And it's critical that we have them demanding geothermal. So that's why I think we need an ingredient branding approach. So think of geothermal as spandex.
Can you
That's what we need
imagine
to get
this
to.
passion? Just not even working with it fully, but it's still seeing it from the perspective like you are. I'm amazed actually. But tell me more about like what if you're looking at all of us sitting in here and you're going to be listening in on the panel as well. What can we each do to advance the visibility of geothermal?
I think what we have to do is tell one big story, stop arguing with each other, and celebrate all the successes and talk about all the successes across the sector. And what I mean by telling one big story is we need to unite under the brand that it is all geothermal, but that means we have permission to talk about what all of geothermal can do. So we can say geothermal can solve the world's power problems and replace natural gas and supply heat in winter at night, which you can't do with solar and wind very well. We can solve the world's heating problems. We can solve the world's cooling problems. We can help the world meet SDG 7. I think it's actually potentially essential to human survival that we get our shit together and are able to properly promote this and get permission to build it out. So, so what we can all do is talk about everything geothermal can do. And don't say, well, this part of geothermal only works in this country, or this part of geothermal only works here. It's everything in geothermal, everything that all geothermal can do is what we should be promoting. So talk about the whole thing.
So what is the best story for geothermal to tell?
Well, I've thought since, I said I started working with geothermal in '84 with Anne at Wairaki, but as a kid growing up in New Zealand, I drove past all the steam crossing road signs at Wairaki. So that's been visible to me pretty much my entire life. And I think the story, it's always seemed like geothermal has an inherently obvious, perfect story to tell. And we have low to no emissions, an incredibly small environmental footprint. Like you look at the gigawatt of the geysers in California, and I think I roughly calculated that's like 7,500 acres of solar panels plus storage to replace something that you can't even see. And we're the only renewable other than hydro that operates 24/7. And with drought and climate change, I don't know how reliable hydro is going to be anymore. And the last key bullet that I don't think we talk about nearly enough is that geothermal is resilient to climate change and extreme weather. Nicole Lautz sent me a picture of a solar farm after a hurricane's been through. And it's no longer a solar farm, it's now a massive toxic waste dump that has to be cleaned up at vast expense. So that story is pretty amazing, and it's pretty easy to tell it if you encapsulate it that way. Zero emissions, works 24/7, small environmental footprint, and it'll survive. So we can distill it right down to that, I think.
But some of it, I think that some of it is very inspiring for all of us to hear. And then we are caught up in like the world where we are. We are challenged by technology, finance, and all of this. And then the marketing part disappears in a sense. But what would you, I mean, we have the panel here today. What would you like them to conclude in to make sure that the thing that you're talking about now changes?
With any serious marketing campaign, it takes a long time. It's not, we'll do something for 6 months and we're done. It is a basic change of direction for all of us to start talking about this bigger picture. I am continually astounded, a very trivial example, when I started getting engaged in reaching influencers on Twitter, because I think a key strategy is reaching people who've got 50,000 or 60,000 followers in the climate space and engaging with them to have them tell the geothermal story. But I find interesting things in geothermal on Twitter, they're really popular if they get 7 likes and 2 retweets. It's like, okay, there's 1,000 people in this building, but somehow that's what we can do in the social media space. So each of us could think about, what are we going to do to be a little bit more active in the conversation? And I think geothermal has to stop being apologetic. Everybody in geothermal is happy to talk about what they can't do, but everyone else, solar and wind, will say, we can already deliver 100% renewable power. Well, that's just a straight lie. They can't. But that's what millions of people around the world are buying, and they are paying a premium to buy 100% renewable solar and wind. You folks are actually sitting on something that can do that. But then we say, well, we can only do it in these particular conditions, in this particular country, and if we can get this sort of thing, and we can't do it for 10 years. But we have to stop doing that. You should all be very proud of what you do. And we need to be talking about this in terms of the things that we could do. And there's the intersection of investment and public policy and the economic ecosystem and regulation. And they're all interconnected. Politicians will do things if they think consumers want them and care about them. Power companies will offer things if they think consumers want them. Hence, the Gore-Tex analogy that we need to make geothermal be Gore-Tex. And we need to make people want it. And you can all do that if you just participate in the conversation. You're all consumers as well as being geothermal experts.
I think that's worth an applaud, doesn't it? Thank you much, Peter, for your perspective. I hope that you will be part of the debate as well when
Sure.
you listened in to the guys.
I'll try not to throw things from.
Okay, good. Thank you. Or if you do that, don't point them at me. Okay? Okay, it's time to me to introduce the panelists. As I told you, first before that, Alexander Richter, please come up on stage. We have our 57 experts joining in. We have an additional 130 people watching on our channels out there, and we have also the GVC channels as well. So there are a lot of people and a lot of pressure, you guys. I hope you're ready. We're going to be discussing 5 key aspects. So these were the 5 key aspects that came up from the roundtable before. We asked, why are we not bigger than we are? And the things that we discussed then was general positioning, valuation and attributes offered by geothermal, cost, business and financials, technology, and awareness building public acceptance. Those were the bottlenecks that the last roundtable discussed. We have asked our experts, why is this the case? What should we do about it? And what is already done? And these are the underlying facts that we will discuss here today. But to do that, I need my panel up on stage. So please join me up on stage and give them a hand.
Where? I don't know where to sit.
I'll sit next to you.
Go one more.
Oh,
Okay.
sit in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Magnus Brandberg, Will Petit, Anne Robertson-Tett, Andy Sabin, and Andrea Blair. Give them a hand again, please. So, guys, I'm turning to you now because there are some rules of the game that you need to know. Okay?
This is going to be fun.
This is going to be fun, okay? So, rule number 1, don't go over your time. Please respect the schedule. So, no mansplaining.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
good.
drink to
I
that.
can say that still. We'll see. So, make sure that each and everyone should be heard, and make sure that you keep it to fact. So, no corporate bullshit. Can I say that? I'll say that.
Well,
Yeah, good,
we're
good.
among friends.
We're a lot of friends. Try to be short and concise, and don't be professors. So don't overcomplicate things. We want to have
Man.
we want to be solving these things, and also we have a couple of rules. We
nothing to
praise
say.
other
I know, I
people.
love
We don't criticize them openly, and at the same time, let's have some fun. I hope this is going to be a really feisty debate. I hope you get into like some arguments and don't agree with each other. And to the guys on virtual there, Alex, make sure you really fire them up so that they challenge these guys over here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you guys
Lot
ready?
of instructions.
Good. So the first question that we wanted to discuss is general positioning. Alex, can you please give us a little bit of a background to general positioning? What was that about?
I guess the general message was that we need to figure out a way how do we appear among other renewable energy sources and other energy sources for that matter, and how can we best put ourselves out there within the different choices of energy and highlighting what we have to offer.
So we asked the group, and the first question they got, what is the industry currently doing to improve general positioning? Or actually, no, this is the one. Why is general positioning a bottleneck in the industry? You can see from the picture behind. What's your comment on this one?
Very interesting, and it shows that we have clearly not the one topic, but quite a lot of topics. So to kind of putting them together will be an interesting discussion to see what are the core things that we can do. And it's a difficult task, but it's going to be exciting.
It says policy and small as the biggest word. And then next question was, what is the industry currently doing to improve general positioning? And in the middle, we have the biggest word called marketing. The last question we asked is, what do you believe the industry should be doing to improve general positioning? And there are 3 words standing out there.
Well, we need to work together, of course. I think that's an obvious question. We need to educate ourselves and others about different options, and I think there's a lot for us in the industry to learn from others, so that will be an interesting topic. And of course, investment. And investment naturally not only financially, but also in things that we learn.
So let's turn to the panel. What do you guys think about this topic, general positioning? Is it a bottleneck, and what should we do about it? Let's I go first to you, Will. What are your opinions about this?
Well, first of all, I think we should start off by defining geothermal. Because to me, geothermal, you have to take a holistic approach. And geothermal is bringing together all 3 facets of geothermal energy. And that is power production, direct heat use, and geothermal heat pumps. And bringing those 3 together, then the argument becomes decarbonization for society. And by combining those 3, then you can make the argument, well, geothermal is going to hit anytime, anywhere, decarbonization of society.
Agree, disagree? Any comment?
No, I agree. And I think it speaks to the spectrum that geothermal offers, but I think we need to be simple how we say it, as Peter said. You know, it's like we get into the technical details and we're going to lose the audience. So it's got to be like the elevator pitch for geothermal. We are all of that. And let's not put the but not everywhere, you know, for this or that. So let's keep it simple and positive, and what geothermal can do to help the planet.
But how does that work? I'm going to turn to you, Magnus, if we're talking about this, because you're sitting from the investment perspective here. If someone comes with half the story and just a pitch, are you going to be interested in?
Yes, of course. But I'm thinking bigger than just the energy sector. I'm thinking about what Peter was saying about Gore-Tex and what Mr. Alberger was saying about, you have to gather around one project. And I totally agree what you're saying. Hot water from the ground is nothing that people think about or care about. But if you talk about resilience, and that's how I got into geothermal. I started with the end game, what needs to happen on this earth, on this planet. And it's really, we need to create a resilient society that can withstand the impact of climate change. And everyone on the planet cares about that. And from that you can work backwards, and I found that geothermal is one of the solutions that create that resilient society. And that is, I think resilience is our Gore-Tex, so to speak, because that's something that everyone cares about. And people don't even know that resilience is a problem, but once the floods hit Central Europe, the devastating floods this summer, and once the electricity prices go up in Europe like they do now, people start asking, so why weren't we prepared? What have we been doing? Why isn't this society built to withstand these shocks? And that's when we have to be good at promoting geothermal, or resilience, as I would say.
Just building on that, there were blackouts in Southern California a few years ago, and the geothermal plants were able to start on their own. Black start, no power from the grid providing, and actually building back after the blackout to get energy going to everyone.
Andy, would you be able to sell, International Geothermal Association, would you be able to sell geothermal through resilience?
I think, actually, I'm going to say something very controversial. She was actually
No, that's fine.
Andy.
Yeah,
I could tell by the way she was looking at me, but
It's two Andys here. I should put Andy over there.
sorry. I'm going to say something very controversial that is probably going to freak everybody out.
Oh, good.
Nobody actually cares about geothermal. Nobody cares about it, and I'm sorry, I love geothermal. People care about plugging into sustainable, ethically produced energy. So the more we frame and get technical about the wording, the more we talk about this and that, the more we lose interest from people. People care about catalyzing economic development. People care about jobs. People care about their environment they live in. People care about, all of those things. And so the more we talk about geothermal versus wind versus, no one cares. The sooner we can say, we can transform your community, we can provide you food production, we can give you 100 jobs in a town of 5,000. We can, those are the ways that we should be talking about geothermal. We get caught up on the words, and the reality is we don't offer geothermal. We offer real solutions to people about their lives and the way that they live.
Well said.
Oh, they liked it.
So I'll give,
Andy, please.
oh, sorry, go on, Andy.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Will.
Well, I'll give a couple of perspectives of from geothermal rising that we've, and Andy kind of knows this because she was part of this whole process, and so was Peter. And we hired a marketing company, a really fantastic creative group out of Washington D.C. that did a fantastic job for us, and they did a study on how we should be marketing geothermal. And this was why we rebranded to Geothermal Rising from Geothermal Resources Council. And so one of the key things that they turned around to us was, you need to be extroverted. As an industry and as a community, you're spending way too much time talking amongst yourselves and talking at yourselves.
Yeah.
And you need to be actually talking out there. You need to be engaging with the public. You need to be getting the messages out. You need to be telling the public the story that is using the earth to save the earth. And the second thing they came around to, the second key point they turned around to us is geothermal is way too much of a complicated word. We love geothermal. as geothermalists, but geothermal to the general public is way too complicated. It's too difficult to understand in general. Unlike solar and wind. Solar is the sun, wind is the wind. What's geothermal? That's where we start getting into problems because we have to start then trying to explain ourselves. So they said, simplify it. Make it a lot simpler, make it a lot easier to understand, and generate that passion within the general public for using the energy that's within the earth.
Good, Andy. This one, Andy David.
The other Andy.
The other one. What are your thoughts on what you've been hearing so far?
So I guess I have a narrower perspective than a lot of people on this panel. I work for the Department of Defense, as I was telling you earlier, but DoD is a huge, and we manage a geothermal field that makes electricity. But DoD is a huge electricity consumer and power consumer in the United States. And for the first time in 10 years, all of a sudden our leaders, our decision makers, are asking us for solutions. They're not asking us to describe the solutions, they just want solutions, and they want them tomorrow. And since we represent the geothermal group, the so-called geothermal, anyway, it doesn't matter what we represent, they want geothermal solutions tomorrow. And they want resiliency, as Andy was saying. They want energy safety, energy security, and energy resiliency, and they're looking for solutions. In the last 10 years, they weren't. So they don't want the 55-minute presentation on what high enthalpy geothermal system is. They just want to know if we can get them a solution, how long would it take, and what are the costs?
Interesting. Let's turn to our panel on the virtual end. What do the geothermal experts say?
Well, it's an interesting question put forward. Some maybe fit not exactly kind of the topic we're targeting here. But I think one of the main messages is stories. I think that's the main theme here that I can say, and celebrating successes even though they are not ours. So celebrating also that of other developers, for example, and not back-talking others as well. That was one big point here. And understanding that we're essentially selling hot water, and we should kind of treat it as such, as something hot to sell. And I thought that was actually quite interesting. The other point was about more catchier stats. So understanding how we can better put a number to what we're trying to sell. Because the abstract megawatts and kilowatts and hours and it might be too tricky. That's it. The other rest is kind of then going a little bit too far in the discussion, but I think that's roughly the message here from the virtual audience.
So it seems like everybody are in agreement, so why are we not doing it? Why are we not there if everybody's in agreement? Who wants to answer that?
I can have a go.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm making all the outlandish statements. I think it's because we're a group of technical people talking to ourselves. And for a long time, we convince ourselves and put these boundaries around ourselves, and we go, oh, like everyone said, Peter said it earlier, we can't do that because it's not high temperature, and we can't do that. When in reality, it is not a technical discussion. Resources have never failed a project. People fail projects. Regulatories, decision makers, communities, without having enough data. So, resources never fail projects. It's people. And we don't talk to people as a technical community enough. So where are the communities and the discussions that we're having? And where are the regulators that are turning up at the table? Where are, our ambitious talk saying, we're going to change the world and we're going to do it this way and get on board. And so I think it's about stepping outside of our comfort zone. It's like seeing all of our imagery in presentations and seeing pipes, and we'll go, whoa, shiny pipe. And look at that beautiful power station, look at that steam. And everyone else in the world goes, pollution.
Yep, that's true.
So we're looking at our industry through our own lens. And what we need to do is sit outside ourselves and look at ourselves from their lens and the way that they see the world. And I think that's where we need to start heading.
I think you could take it a step further too. At least, again, from my narrow perspective in the United States, the major, at one end of the spectrum, if you think of geothermal as a spectrum, as Peter was saying, at the high temperature end of the spectrum, the companies are all competing with each other. They're, to pick up on Ambassador Alberg's statements, they act like mining companies, and they're forced to act like that, and they compete. They learn something about a drilling program, and that becomes their information, not to be shared with anyone. I don't know how you unloosen those strings, how you incentivize company A to be more collaborative with company B, because when the tide rises, we all rise. So how do we get that tide to rise collectively across the spectrum in geothermal?
I call that growing the pie. It's like we don't want a bigger slice of a pie. We want a bigger pie. And then everyone can have some, right? And that, to me, is the message we need to pass. But I just want to pick up on what Andy said, and you've mentioned food.
Not Andy.
The other Andy, although I really like this Andy as well. You mentioned food security obliquely twice, and I think the greenhouse message is anything that people can see and touch and feel and eat. There you're getting into the public discussion. You're getting into the public mind. So you're right. It's about making a benefit to a community while at the same time saving the planet.
I like saving the planet. Do we have any questions from our audience that wants to be on before we go further? We have one question over there, all the way upstairs. Yeah.
Okay, you're going to get your exercise now, Mary.
Oh, you're coming here? Oh, David, that's fantastic.
So this one, right? Oh, that's okay. Is this working? Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I found in marketing geothermal energy is what do you take a photo of?
Yeah.
And my favorite photo that I've used on our websites for 8 years is the Blue Lagoon with people swimming and relaxing with the power plant in the background. So I wonder what thoughts everyone has on that. What are the best photos you can take for the biggest possible audience to get excited about this?
So David, I had the same thing. This is like deja vu all over again. It was 20 years ago. The California Energy Commission was so proud to introduce their renewable energy booth that they're going to show at conferences. And I'm like, duh, it's wind and solar, wind and solar. I said, come on, we could have a photo of solar. And they said, oh no, we could only find a cooling tower and people think it's a nuclear power plant. So I said, no, get some people swimming in hot water, get some images of that. And they said, well, no, we already made the booth. Okay, well, that was kind of a disappointing day. But I don't know that we've really come forward since then, although I've been seeing lots at this conference, and actually some of you, the ones you've been doing from Baseload, really nice images. And I almost got my web designer to put one of a woman in a pool that just was beautiful.
So
I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
I would maybe be a bit more controversial here.
Oh, go, Will.
Watch yourself, Will.
None of that, really. The visuals that need to be representing geothermal is the earth. It needs to be earthscapes, not pipes or geothermal power plants or beautiful pools of water, but with power plants in the background.
No power.
It needs to be the earth. It needs to be fields and mountains. It needs to show that what we're using is we're using the earth to power and heat and decarbonize our society.
I'd add people and activity.
Yeah.
So, seeing people eating tomatoes and then saying, powered by the earth. So it's people and activity. People like people. Some people like people. People and activity, how we're using it to catalyze our lives and have good prosperity. So being creative, you don't have to be literal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that banana this morning. The woman at the greenhouse is saying, well, it's a small Icelandic banana, but it's really good.
Yeah.
People like it and eating it. Oh.
It's actually, I think, if if we distill it down, it's a very simple story. You know, solar energy uses the sun. We use the earth. What we are about is we are about capturing the energy from within the earth.
Awesome, thank you very much, and thank you, Will. I think you've inspired me to go for a big road trip around Scotland and take some pictures of some nice mountains.
Yeah,
so.
there you go. Ben Nevis.
Good.
Yeah.
I actually got a blink here from Peter. He's like, you didn't make them answer the question, why are we not further? So I'm not gonna let you go on that one. We're gonna come back to that one a little bit later, but I know that you have a comment as well.
Yeah, so I guess talking about pictures, I think one of the things that kind of carries me over the years quite a bit is the notion that many nations that don't have geothermal facilities often use pictures from Iceland, which is naturally fantastic for us, but it sends the wrong message. It sends the wrong message in the sense of we can only do it here, but not where you want to build your plant. And I think that's very important. So DOE is as guilty as some other nations. This proud nation of Turkey using pictures from Iceland when they have a lot of their own really beautiful plants is a lost opportunity. So
I can tell you a few people that annoys, actually.
So
They may have thought it was Hawaii in the winter.
And Alex, as always, there's a lot in that statement that you just made that I think we need to probably talk a lot more about as we go through this.
The question stays, why are we not further than we actually are? But let's move on to the second topic, the key aspect that was the...
I have just a quick question or comment.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were mentioning what we can do further to promote geothermal, sometimes I wake up and say, like, what I can do extra in geothermal to make it more passionate or to engage more people, because indeed, we sometimes just speak to each other in the industry and we do not have that resonance in the outer world. And we all have neighbors. So have we spoken with our neighbors, and we might be able to understand more the perception of common people next to us about geothermal. We'll find out that, yeah, most of people have no idea what is geothermal, and they are looking to us like crazy. But those people are like the customers we were speaking about in the morning, this morning. The easy or the low-hanging fruits for the use of geothermal in district heating. So, yeah, it's kind of a comment, but also for all of us. How many of us have spoken with our neighbors about geothermal, engaging our communities, people around us to push forward for geothermal in our municipalities?
Thank you very much. I like that. I agree. I think that we will move further as well with, I think that we will come back to that actually, a good comment. If we move into the second key aspect that we actually asked our general geothermal experts is about the valuation and attributes offered by geothermal. Alex, would you like to give us a bit background to that topic?
I think it very much fits in the human story that we talked about earlier. Is like, how do we describe the sense of geothermal? How do we experience geothermal? We that know it differently than people that have never experienced it, and how we sell this. And I guess that's one of the attributes, but there's so much more of what role it can play, et cetera, and how we communicate those. And I think this is the point where we need to get a better understanding of what these attributes are and how we promote them. And I think that's a discussion to be had, and maybe there are some fantastic ideas that we can generate.
Let's look what the experts said. We asked them, why are valuation and attributes offered? Why are evaluation and attributes offered by geothermal a bottleneck to the industry? And ignorance and sustainability was words that showed up. There you see also what's the industry currently doing to improve this. And there is a very difficult situation to find what we're actually doing. Because there is nothing that stands out. There are a lot of words only. And then in the end, what do you think the industry should be doing? Then we have a big word in the middle is innovation and entrepreneurship. So if I turn to the panel now, on the topic of valuation and attributes, what would be our next step to move forward here? Let's start from there. Who wants to go first?
Well,
Who's gonna go?
so there isn't really a problem, right? Because the valuation and attributes of geothermal are just brilliant, right? We all know that. We all know that geothermal is the ultimate renewable energy. But it's getting that message out there that's the challenge. And you know, and Peter hit on this, and I'm absolutely on the same page with Peter, and I think what he's done is brilliant and really showing us the way. But you know, you can make so many arguments for geothermal. It's not necessarily the fact that there's a difficulty with geothermal. Now then we get into technical details that we don't that we want to talk about.
The professor, yeah.
But exactly. But actually, you know, when you look at it, and if we can make the arguments and get that out into the public domain effectively, then, and be that extrovert about it, then, you know, I think we'll be very successful. People will understand that, you know, this is a great technology to embrace. And I did a very similar thing as Peter recently. I looked at a 400 megawatt power plant, coal-fired power plant. And what it would take, understanding now what we've learned in California, it would take over 10,000 acres of solar panels to replace that one baseload producer of one coal-fired power plant. Now, that's just not achievable across a nation like the US, and when you look at it globally. So we need something else big within that energy mix. It's not to say that solar doesn't play a role and wind doesn't play a role and other sources of energy don't play a role. They all do. But we need something else big. And geothermal is that obvious energy source.
And I think you're talking about stewardship here, Will, and I think Peter was too when he brought up the geysers. You know, if you look at a satellite image of the geysers, it's very hard to see where the power plants are. It's all open land. And in Indonesia, there's a 220 megawatt power station in a tea plantation. There's in Sumatra a very big project with native forest and wild animals all around it, and the developer actively reclaims the land and puts it back to how it was so that those animals can live there and in all their great diversity. So we do make a good neighbor. And I would say on the valuation question, or let me just say this, I think we need to stop thinking about price and start talking about value. And anyone who's been in a sales course knows that, oh, you do value selling. Well, let's do some value selling for geothermal. I mean, come on, it does more than a lot of other sources. It's cleaner, it's natural. I love the concept of saying it's under our feet, let's do it, you know, so people like it. How many kids pick up rocks and wonder where they come from? It happens all the time. So, but anyway, let's you know, if I hear again, oh, geothermal's got to lower its price, I just want to scream and tear my hair out. You know, this is not what we need. What we need is to recognize that other sources are killing us and that geothermal is benign and 24/7.
I don't think we do know what our attributes are. I think we know, but we don't have the numbers.
No, we don't.
We don't have the data. I mean, you know, does everyone know that there's a Māori group in New Zealand that started with $80,000 in the bank, and within 12 years, because of their geothermal land ownings, they're now worth $500 million and spend tens of millions of dollars every year on their social infrastructure in there for the descendants? No. Why not? You know, we don't share those attributes. We don't share those stories. We don't know how really good geothermal is for the environment. We don't talk about the fact that direct use can provide more economic revenue than electricity. When we stack that cascade use with climb-on technologies and silica extraction and think about investment on a brine stream, you know, we don't talk about that. So I think that we need to stop being coerced into an LCOE, levelised cost of electricity discussion, and stop talking about economic times and debating, well, that's 3 cents cheaper than, you know, gas. Well, it probably isn't. But, you know, because we'll never win in that space. Where we will be, and we're forced to speak in that space because it's easy and convenient for others. We need to refuse to speak into that space and speak into the space where we can add more value, speak about life cycle analysis, speak about environmental, social and cultural frameworks where we win, and they're financial in those spaces where we win as well. So I think we need to get together, and we've been speaking about putting together a project globally where we start gathering the data around those other things so that we can, instead of all just feeling like it adds up, we actually have the evidence that we can stamp and throw around and say that's where we stack up.
Representing a finance institute, in a sense, how does this sound?
I don't think the value proposition is the problem. I agree with you. Geothermal is unbeatable when it comes to the value proposition. It's just that people haven't really been forced to think about it. But as I said, we will see sooner rather than later situations where people say, why wasn't, you know, our energy system more resilient? Why is there a power outage? And we can see it in California already today. Solar and wind, they've reached their maximum capacity. And what's now? Okay, some storage, and the only solution that we can provide is either geothermal or nuclear. And nuclear is costly and it takes a lot of time. So the value proposition will be evident for everyone, unfortunately, sooner rather than later due to climate change. And what we should be doing is to prepare for growth. Because when the demand comes, everyone will want to have geothermal at the same time. And then we have to be prepared to meet that demand.
Thank you. I think we have a question from the audience here. Peter.
So Magnus just touched on what I was about to ask about or comment about. Over the last 2 years, the entire world has radically changed. And we've gone from it's going to be fossil fuels forever to, as far as I'm concerned, we've passed the tipping point of fossil fuels are dead. They're just going to take a very long time to die. And so the extent of the climate change conversation has just gone up orders of magnitude. We just need to be in those conversations. And when people talk about how we're going to solve these problems, there needs to be someone saying, here's a geothermal solution, or here's a great example of somebody who did something in geothermal. The conditions, and Magnus is absolutely right, that the demand conditions are here, and the term I've been using is the wave is coming and we have to have the surfboard in the water. The wave is pretty much already here. So it's time to go.
But we do need to be going down parallel paths, though. I mean, there are very real technical obstacles every step of the way that do need to be overcome in order for us to grow in certain sectors. I mean, I hate to be the fly in the ointment, but we do need, everyone in this room probably has an iPhone. Yeah. Nobody in this room knows how it works, and yet they all use it. And you don't need to know how it works. Everyone in the world probably wants power, electricity, heat, cooling. They don't need to know how it works, but we need to know how it works. So on the nuts and bolts end, the 1,000 people in this room represent probably the core of the expertise that does need to, in parallel, be solving some of these technical problems. So we can't whitewash the fact that there are, just like every industry, there are technical problems, but there are fantastic solutions, assuming we can overcome those problems.
And I think there are a lot of solutions that we can use already today, and then we see more of it coming along. And that's part of what I mean that we should prepare for scale, is to really, think about all the different parts of the value chain, what needs to happen to make this scalable. And we know, for example, drilling is one example. We know there's a lot of heat in the ground, but permeability is a problem. How can we come around that? And there are a lot of solutions coming, and we need to work on them. I totally agree with that.
So what needs to come first? The marketing to get more money in, or the money to get more marketing?
That's the next question, right?
All right.
I think it's all in parallel. Everything has to be done in parallel to be successful here. And we will be successful.
Alex.
It's just a matter of time.
There's some interesting points here that then I've cut into what you've been discussing. And one of those things about the attributes was about, are we targeting the wrong people, the wrong target group? Should we maybe target just the utilities and the companies that implement these things? Do customers really care where the energy comes from as long as it's green? That was a question put forward. I mean, it's a good.
See, Peter Tate, he goes like this, and he does it.
It's a good point. And the other point, like Andy was saying about the financial aspects, highlighting really how valuable geothermal is as a business opportunity. And I think that's also the aspect, talking about things in parallel. Yes, we need to promote, but the question is this. And then the other point here was mentioned again, is like, two things. Do we need an Elon Musk figurehead that kind of becomes controversial and polarizes? One of the points, but the other point was also back to the Lamborghini that came up in the online discussions.
Yeah.
Well, here was a Lamborghini,
It was a good,
so
Lamborghini.
I have to target the virtual.
What about Tesla? Where did they go?
Well, let's talk about quality. But I guess the point, the point made is here, like, do we really have to kind of focus on some of the aspects when so many people understand what the value is? And
Well, in the state of California, for instance, there is a growing awareness of the value of geothermal in the last 10 years, and someone will certainly correct me, but now you're selling not just to utilities, but you're selling to community choice aggregators. So entire communities are saying, we have a demand of, 12 megawatts, and we want 12 megawatts of clean energy. We don't want fossil power anymore. And that didn't exist. That's growing. And California, at least in the United States, kind of leads the wave of the entire country. So that's a positive development. So there is an interest in that value proposition.
The last point I would like to make, thank you for this one. We would like to jump into awareness building and public acceptance. If you go and give me some thoughts on that, Alex, what did we come up with in the article?
The idea is, I guess, how do we talk about geothermal and how do we create interest? And that we talked a lot about stories and awareness of the positive aspects. So instead of, and I guess that goes back to virtual audience as well, it's like instead of bitching about other companies or talking badly about things because we don't like them, we should embrace their success. Because as Anne was saying, the bigger the pie gets, the better for all of us, instead of constantly fighting for the same size of pie.
Right. So we asked, again, our source of geothermal experts why, and you see that words that come up is simplifying the jargons, education are big words that pop up when they are asked to pick out a word. When it comes to what the industry currently is doing about it, it says that we're trying to put up a better value proposition that pops up, and in the end, what do you believe the industry should be doing? Education, jobs. And that was the big ones popping up, except for member IGA there. So, so what are your thoughts on the setting when it comes to this part, public acceptance and awareness building?
Well, when I tell people, and now I'm in California, that they say, oh, what do? You get into that conversation. I say, oh, I do geothermal energy. And they're really excited about that. Actually, it used to be, about 10 years ago, it was sort of like, oh, maybe I better talk to someone else. Geothermal energy, that sounds complicated. But everyone now is sort of right into it. So I'm trying to leverage those conversations as far as I can and say, okay, well, what do you want to know? And as the speakers said before, who asked the question, are you talking to your neighbors? That's good, but it's not alone enough. I mean, I feel positive about it in our little bubble environment, perhaps. The jobs thing, geothermal creates a lot of jobs. All the many things that geothermal can do, the spectrum of value that it offers, you have to find like what key fits that lock for that place, and what's their need. But I think it is simplifying, educating, having a unified voice is a good thing, but then we might lose that whole spectrum. I'm thinking about green hydrogen these days. But that's kind of an abstract thing for a lot of people. We need to make it a bit more human.
So, just a perspective on this. I think one thing we have to think about is why. Why are we doing this? And we are doing it to make geothermal more approachable for the general public. But why are we doing that? Why are we connecting with the general public? Well, we're doing that because we want to apply upward pressure. And what I mean by that is as Andy was saying, in different geographical areas, you're talking to different people. You're talking to the utilities, you're talking to community choice aggregators, you're talking to public utility commissions, you're talking to the government, you're talking to policy makers, to decision makers. And you're doing that through the general public. You're getting the general public on board, getting them excited and optimistic about geothermal energy, enthused by geothermal energy. And through that process, you're pushing upward pressure into all of those folks. And that comes down to another key point, which is it's all very geographical. Geothermal energy is different in different geographies. Depending on where you are, that's where you start hitting the holistic approach. For instance, on the west coast of the US, we have a very different situation right now to the east coast of the US. In the west coast, we have the resources to build out power. On the east coast, we have the resources to build out heat, and they need it. The northeast of the US is difficult for other renewable sources of energy. They need, the big one, they need geothermal. So, and that also leads to other kind of benefits for the community, the geothermal community, because we're getting that message across to the policymakers in Washington and those states that are not anywhere near power production at the moment. The other big challenge that we have, and this is kind of where we're moving into the technical aspects, is we need to make geothermal anywhere. Right now, we are 24/7, we are anytime. Geothermal needs to get to anywhere, and that is the biggest technical challenge that we have as geothermalists.
I think I just want to add to that actually I get quite a lot of calls about countries that are looking to grow or start their geothermal adventure, I'd like to say. And a lot of them are, how do we get people to help us? How do we, what's the magic recipe? And my personal opinion, disclaimer, not that of the IGA or any other affiliates, is just get a project up. Do it imperfectly. Just rally around, pick a winning horse. Everyone says you shouldn't pick a winning horse and you should be about PR. And I say rubbish, because the sooner people can touch, feel and see success and point to it in their neighbourhood, the quicker you'll get the next one. And we've seen that with Māori in New Zealand, and we see that around the world. And so I would say get everyone into the first project and go for it any way you can. I hear lots of, in island nations, and they talk about, how do we do direct use? We don't, and the problem is, from our industry, we look at the engineering first and the resource first, and we say, what's a beautifully engineered option for that resource? Actually, markets don't care. They don't care if it's, you know, beautifully engineered. They might be okay with duct tape. But thinking about the market pull and not the resource engineer push, and do things imperfectly, get it going, get momentum, and then people can touch and see it, and the next lot will be straight after. And that's...
You know, I
We
want
have
to
a
go back
point,
to what our ambassador, I guess he had to leave, had to say about the triple helix. You know, getting government involved. In the state of New York, there's a huge initiative for geothermal heat pumps. And that is making putting geothermal in the lexicon. But it wouldn't have happened. I would say Dandelion, the Google subsidiary, is sort of jumping into that. But it started with an initiative from the state government and the government of New York City. So this is like taking the heating and cooling load off of people, and if you think about heating and cooling, it's about 30% of electricity use in the United States. Now 30% decarbonization would be a really good win, and people are doing it. And I'll just make one last anecdote. In Boston, it was a homeowner realized she had a gas leak in her house, and she went from figuring that out and getting that resolved to going on a crusade for heat pumps in Massachusetts. So this kind of story really rallied a bunch of people, and some of them were at Geothermal Rising, the heat people. You might have met them, Will. Really, you know, and this story about, okay, we've got to get off this gas. The pipes are old, the pipes are leaking, we need geothermal. So again, maybe denigrating the other source, but at least it's one that we don't like very much.
We have some comments from the virtual.
I think clearly about what you can say, heat will change the story for geothermal.
Heat will change.
Heat will make geothermal anywhere. So, and I think that's kind of a point. But the main point that here came from the audience is like scale, and that ties into what we said. If we are too focused on selling geothermal, we miss the big goal out of sight that we need to put things on the line now. Scale, we need to scale up much, much faster than we do. Partly my presentation today showed that it's just too slow of a growth. But so drill, baby, drill, I guess is the main message here. We need to drill
Drill, baby,
for
drill.
geothermal.
Okay.
And that's...
Any more comments from our experts?
I think that's it from that perspective.
With the 5 minutes left to the end, we have some questions from the audience I see here up there. I just want to start getting your heads ready for the summary here. We've had some good discussions. And we asked also, rank the following key aspects from 1 to 5 in importance to prioritize. And I think that this is quite important here. We have on the first place, cost, business, finance, awareness building on second place, valuation and attributes offered by geothermal on third place, and general positioning on fourth place. In the last place came technology, in a sense. Have this in mind a little bit, because this will be the summary. Where do we start and why have we not started yet? So with that said, I'm turning to audience, please.
Hi, Jeroen van Duin, Shell Geothermal. I would like to link to Peter Tate's comment. I think we need to tell the people what they're missing. The market pool will come. This is the right opportunity. We're 5 years post COP21 in Paris. I'm not sure what next week will bring, but it's clear that the pressure is on for all governments to show their decarbonization plans. And I don't think they know what geothermal can contribute at all. In the Netherlands, we've done a master plan in 2018. It was before my time, no credits to me. But it showed we can decarbonize the equivalent of 4 million out of the 8 million households. So that rang a bell, and the government sort of has applied a government incentives and a policy and so on. They're behind that. I think that's the sort of image we need to be able to paint for people to actually ask us to develop geothermal. I joke, coming from Shell, we've had some seismicity issues, you may know. I don't do geothermal unless people want me to, but I'm very happy to oblige if they want to. So not, sorry, Alexander, not drill, baby, drill, but please, if you want, I'll help out on the geothermal.
Thank you. With that said, I think that what we are concluding. I think that we are in agreement in many things, but I think that we were in agreement about a month and 2 and 3 or maybe a couple of years ago as well. What do we need to do? What the experts are saying is that we need to focus on cost and business, but what would you say? Where do we need to get started in order to actually move forward, to scale, and to have a frog leap to the next part? Magnus.
Okay, 3 things: execution, execution, and execution. We have to put projects online, commission projects that we can learn from as a community and as partners, and that the world around us can see and get inspired by. I think if we do that, that will affect all of those 5 categories there and make the next project a little bit easier, and the third project a little bit more easier, and then suddenly we reach a tipping point. And we don't have to get further than to the tipping point, which I think was a very good point in Peter's report. It's a struggle in the beginning, and I think we should be proud of what we're doing in this industry, because there are things happening, and we don't have to come further than to a tipping point. We don't know how many projects that are, but sooner or later we will come there.
One thing that's holding us back, though, is policy from executing, I would say. You know, at least in the United States, we have extraordinarily long permitting timelines, and it's not, Indonesia is the same, maybe even worse, more agencies to deal with, et cetera. But I think what we need there to get that execute thing going is to convince people that we're putting in a clean energy source and we're good stewards of the land, and therefore they should have expedited permitting timelines so that we can just get on with it. It's really a huge bottleneck. It costs a lot of money. You know, time is virtually money in these scenarios, and so without the policy piece, I don't think we'll get there. And we have to educate to get the policy going.
So execute, educate, Will?
So these are fantastic comments, and absolutely agree. There's a lot of detail in scaling up. And Alex is right, we need to drill, baby, drill. But to do that, we need to de-risk projects. And we need policies to come in that allow us to de-risk projects so that it generates investment. And by generating investment, we then execute. That generates more and more projects. But one other thing I wanted to mention is as an industry and a community, we need to create a movement. We need to create a movement for change that allows us to get that message out about geothermal energy and everything we've talked about this afternoon. And Geothermal Rising has been putting some of our resources into putting together marketing campaigns. We have a public campaign that will be launched very soon, so look out for that. It's a social media campaign, and please get involved when you see that campaign.
We'll finish up with you, Andy, and this end.
Sure. Again, I had mentioned parallel paths, and I'll just pick up on what Andy and Magnus said. In my small world, one of the first things we think we need to do is execute one of the projects, the low-hanging fruit projects. And there are several that we think we can, and this is under the umbrella of DoD. So it's a small umbrella on the world scale, but it's pretty significant in the United States. In parallel, I would hire someone like Andy to be the mouthpiece of the marketing arm of, well, because we need to be aggressively and passionately telling the story with someone skillful the way Andy is. And the third piece of GR and IGA, and I'm associated with both of them, has an educational component to it. At the same time, we do need to be educating the public about what we're doing and the value proposition. We can't convince everyone tomorrow, but those that we can convince need to be part of the growing chorus. And the last part is, again, back to GR, especially because it's more focused in the United States. the policy end. There is kind of a lobbying arm to GR. We need to teach the policy makers, the decision makers of the value of geothermal. They need to be getting on board as quickly as possible. And for the first time in 10 years, they are interested all of a sudden. And it's because of this nexus of the fact that adults are now making, there are more adults making policy decisions in the world, certainly in my country, than there were a few years ago. And that's significant. And so we need to run through that door now that it's open.
And your
I think, the thing that all of the things we're talking about and that have in common is people. People write policy, people make laws, people build things, people invest in things and spend money. And so we need to talk into spaces that people care about, and that will catalyze action. If we talk about people, their families, and everybody in the world, no matter where you are, the one thing they will say is they hope their children has a better life than they have and have better opportunities and live their potential. And if you can talk into that space and show them that we can play a role in that growing that potential and giving their children a space where they can have more, do more, be more, then we've really, really won, because they will do it. People will do it for their children. And so catalyzing action through reaching people. And so we have to find the shared messages that talk to that, and we need to yell it from the treetops.
There is a famous African saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. What does all of you sitting here, this is my final question, what do we need to make sure that we together move? Because what I hear now is that each and every one of you are sure about your message in a sense, but why are we not screaming together then? Is that a problem in the industry?
I think we are starting to scream together. I think we're not screaming enough. But I've had a sense, and maybe it's just my eternal optimism, which I hope I will be able to maintain. But this event and this time, this is our time. You know, Marit and Alex today said it's the geothermal decade. This is what we've been talking about. So I think the coalescing of this community brings us some strength. And when we recognize that we're not branding ourselves well, that we're not marketing ourselves well, I believe we will go forward. And I think Peter should be given a chance to answer as well, because he's dying to say something now.
It's nice of you to share with your husband.
I will give you a chance, Peter, if you keep it short. Yeah.
I can keep it very short. Oh, here you go. So the fastest thing we can all do to build awareness and visibility is, as soon as you've got a real project that works, as Andy said, you in your region or your sector or your place, you've identified the 10 most influential people in the climate conversation, the people with the 10 biggest audiences, and you go have conversations with them. Because us talking about it scales a little bit, us getting other people to talk about us scales a couple of orders of magnitude bigger. So that's the to-do item.
Thank you. I would like to summarize, because it is time for us to end this conversation. And I would like to summarize it by sending out a real challenge. I know, Marit, come with me here. I know that we have been talking about having all of this expertise collected, not only on this stage, but also with us online and in the audience here today. We would like to challenge the groups or the peoples, or actually all the companies behind Geothermal World Congress, in a sense, to start a task force to make sure that we actually move these steps where we tear down the silos, where we make sure that we not talk about GRC or IGA or any other company, but really to make sure that we're talking about what the industry can do together. And now, of course, I want to ask if this is something that you would sign up for.
We're going to do it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, completely. And I love the fact that you brought it up at the end here, that we need to collaborate. We need to provide a social network for geothermal that's global in nature, and we need that global collaboration.
100%.
So all our geothermal experts concluded as well that we had 2 topics we missed and we wanted to talk to them too. So with that said, being that we will do a task force, we will make sure that this is set up together, and we will make sure that all of you people that are in this and want to contribute additional extra to this will be a part of a voice to unite this industry. With that said, I would really like to thank the panel today. Please give them a hand. Amazing job. I would also like to thank all the people that are virtually online. I would like to give you a big hand. Thank you for contributing, and also to you listening in today, both virtually and live. So a big thank you, and we will get back to you with the next step of the Geothermal Industry Task Force. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christina.